those listening on the radio, Mirah has no shoes on. Just, you know, just wanted you to get a sense of what's going on around here. I like it when people are comfortable like that.
I try.
Yeah.
It's hard to be comfortable all the time. So there's a lot of like sort of different attempts at trying to gain comfort in uncomfortable situations.
Well, sometimes you just need a little cue, like a just a little reminder that it's okay. So anyway, thanks for joining us. It's so good to hear you sing. It's great to hear your songs. I also want to just talk about your craft as a producer, because you really do work hard to make these. And a lot of the records you've recorded, a lot of things you've done kind of DIY, just 4-track recorder and figuring it out. Do you remember the first time you tried to do that, just like making your own recording?
I do. I remember that period of time. I was living in Olympia, and I'd finished. I went to school at the Evergreen State College, and I'd finished school, and I was living downtown, and I met a new friend. His name was Phil Elvrum, and he'd moved to Olympia from Anacortes, and he had a band called The Microphones, which was pretty much just him, and he a lot of people do that.
They do, and it's so confusing.
I always wanted a band name, actually, but I
Did you experiment with that at all? Did you think of something that...
No, I thought it would be, I don't know why. Everybody else who is just a person and then they have a band name that's like The Somethings, it seems so cool. And every time I tried it and tried to think of one, I felt too dorky. And like I already feel dorky enough. I was like, all right, I'll just keep my band name as like my parents gave me my band name.
Yeah,
but,
that works. Works for me.
Yeah. So Phil was a friend of mine, but I also was listening to his music, and he recorded everything himself, and he would put out these tapes, and I was listening to the tapes at home, and I was like listening to the layers, and I thought, I want to do that. Yeah. I want to do that. And my dad had actually given me a cassette 4-track for my graduation present from college, and some microphone stands and microphones. So I just set that up at home. Cool. So those were my first experiments were like home recording with my cassette 4-track. And then I had access to a recording studio called Dub Narcotic that I was just given the key to because that was the magical sort of environment that I lived in Olympia.
But it's great that it started. I mean, I think the fact that your dad gave you a multi-track recording deck, a cassette deck, and some microphones and mic stands as a graduation present for college, it speaks volumes to the fact that you guys stayed connected. I understand recently he has a new idea for a way to support your performing.
He bought me this little device that you hook onto your mic stand that's a drink holder, so that I wouldn't have to, because for years he's watched, my sister plays music also, and he's watched my sister and I like lean over and to have this whole sort of awkward, like have to have a sip of water now, and he just bought us a thing that's right there.
Hey, I got a mic stand drink holder from my dad. That's cool. Not a lot of people can say that. And I think it's safe to say, just again, I alluded to it in the introduction, that your family was tight and connected and values driven. I love the story about you going on a peace march when you were 12.
I did that, yeah.
For how long?
It's
like 6 weeks or something, right?
Yeah, it was the Great Peace March for Global Nuclear Disarmament, and so it was a cross-country march from LA to DC, and my cousin Crystal, who's in the audience here tonight, she was the one who told me about it. She had found out about it from her mom, my aunt, and their friends, and told me about it at our family reunion. And I had spent several years having these really deep-seated fears about nuclear proliferation, and I was like a pretty aware child. So like starting in 4th grade, that was definitely on my mind. It was 1984.
Yeah.
That was a big year for nuclear
apocalypse.
Fear.
Yeah. A lot of fourth graders were going through that, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm being facetious, but of course, I'm the generation where we grew up with, bomb shelters and, hiding under our desks as if that would help.
Yeah. Well, and I knew about that.
Yeah.
I had learned about that, and then I learned about nuclear weapons, and then my cousin Crystal told me about this peace march, and it was a whole bunch of people trying to do something about that.
How many people? How many people were on the march?
It kind of varied. It
Yeah.
sort of expanded and contracted, but I think around 500 was the sort of average.
Were you one of the only 12-year-olds among those 500 people?
Well, my cousin Crystal was 10, I was 12, and we actually went without our parents. So our parents, it's so cool that they did that.
That's really cool.
It is so cool. We were very responsible kids.
Yeah.
And we did have legal guardians who were on the march. And we were the only 2 kids who were on the march without our parents. There were some other kids on the march.
Well, I think that speaks volumes to, again, your connection to your family and the trust they placed in you, and the kind of launch that they gave you as a creative person, which is basically you can do anything you want. Is essentially what you were taught, right? Basically.
Yeah.
You can.
Sometimes that kicks me in the butt because
Yeah.
sometimes I do feel like, well, there are ways that certain things happen that maybe it's a better way than my made-up way. But I also I can't help it. I'm just always making up my own way.
Yeah. And now you found your way. You grew up in the East Coast and around Philadelphia most of the time. Then you went back to the West. You went to the West Coast for about 20 years, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And now you're back in New York. You're living in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And how's that feel? Does it feel sort of like, oh yeah, I remember this, or is it brand new, or what does it feel like?
There are some things that feel like, oh yeah, I remember this, and that feel like sort of a natural environment. And there are a lot of things that, I mean, I'm not really a big city person, I don't think, or maybe I am. I've definitely lived in a lot of big cities and spent much of my life doing that, but I don't identify as a big city person.
I'm sure you had a community of musicians and other people that you performed and created with when you were on the West Coast, but are you finding those people now in Brooklyn, finding your posse and your tribe?
Yeah, I am. It's slow going, and I mean, I was aware that I was leaving a lot behind in terms of music community, but I didn't really think it through, like how long it would take me to develop that in New York. Maya's actually one of the first people. I moved to New York, I finished Changing Light, and then I was going to tour it and had to put a band together. I was like, okay, here I am in New York, and now I need to put this band together here. And that's when I started playing music with Maya. Yeah.
Well, I love the improvisational nature of your journey so far. And for those of you who haven't heard her records, Mirah's records are, like I said before, just well-crafted, lovely sort of sonic landscapes, some even with orchestras, and full orchestration. I don't know whether you've ever had a chance to perform with an orchestra behind you. You have? Uh-huh. Was that amazing?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I performed with the Oregon Symphony a couple of years ago.
Yeah. So.
And yeah, that was a great experience.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're going to get back to music, but I just appreciate you stopping by and getting to know you a little bit.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome back to eTown, if you would, Mirah.